Michael from Roland has returned to the studio, and we've got something very exciting to talk to you about today.
This is the Katana 100 Gen 3.
So for those who have been watching our YouTube channel, you may recognise Michael because he joined me in our Katana Go video that we did.
Yes, I
what
did.
was that now? A couple of months ago?
Yeah,
probably.
about a month ago, yeah.
I think our hairs were maybe slightly different lengths at that point.
I did get my hair cut just for that, and I haven't had a cut since, so that's how you can tell how long ago it was.
It's okay, we're flying the flag for the biggest hair in guitar on both sides here, so it's all good, man. But Michael, for those who maybe didn't see that Katana Go video, is actually our on-site Roland Boss expert,
Yes.
based in our Glasgow store. So certainly for anyone who wants to pick his expertise on anything Boss or Roland related, you can head down to the Trongate store in Glasgow there, and you'll see Michael's nice smiley face kicking about.
course, yeah.
No doubt kind of surrounded by synths usually. That's
Usually, yes, but I'm just, I'm never too far away from a Boss product as well. So yeah, even though I'm with synths and keyboards and pianos, all your Boss related needs, I'm just a phone call away.
You'll find him with a DS1 in his pocket most days as well, just in case. But as we mentioned as well, and I think that's now me said as we mentioned about 10 times already, or in the first bit of this video, but we're here to talk about the brand new family member, I guess, to the Katana amp range.
Yes.
Which I've been very excited to talk about today because there's a couple of really cool features with this. This being the Gen 3 Katana. We're using the 100-watt version for all the sounds today, but it's important to say as well that it does come with a 50-watt version, much the same as the kind of Katana that a lot of people have been using for a long time, have loved, still love to this day as well. And fret not, I guess, with that, because before we jump into what's brand new about this amp, one of those was the sound example that you heard just right at the start of the video, but I think we should go over what's familiar with this amp first, just to, I guess, maybe put some of your minds at rest, just to know that your favourite amp hasn't changed completely.
Yeah, it's pretty much, nothing's really been taken out. It's pretty much everything that you know and love about the Katanas, the Class AB power amp, all the onboard Boss effects that you know and love, the sort of like simple panel workflow at the top, it's all still there. It's just got a few, everything that's there has been refined and improved. The sound quality has been improved a little bit, and improved by a lot. And also, pretty much everything is just as you remember it.
Yeah.
To be honest,
and that's a really quite key thing as well to touch on, was just like, even speaking from our experience on working in the shop and kind of recommending amps to a lot of customers. The Katana was always a go-to, and it was always really popular for a lot of people as well. Kind of because of that ease of use and because of the sounds, like touching on the fact that the sounds have improved on it. It's it's not the most kind of like, there's not like a drastically different change to it, but you can totally tell that every time a new iteration of the Katana comes out,
yeah,
that they've not just plastered the exact same channel onto them. There's been tweaks made into that, whether that be wider spread EQ, more gain, the variation switch that was included in the Mark II version, which is now in with the Gen 3 as well. But there's one of the things I'm sure you'll agree as well is that if somebody comes into the shop looking for a flexible amp, something that's easy to use, something that sounds good but has a lot of bells and whistles that you don't need to, again, jump through hoops to get to, the Katana's always a kind of go-to, just because it's all right there. You'll see on our other cam here, just there's the panel.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who's even had a 5 minutes with an amp will know what's going on with this thing.
Yeah, I mean, the way I always kind of recommend the Katanas as just the amp that sort of blurs the line between beginner, intermediate, professional, whatever, whether you're just starting out, you've never touched an amp in your life, or you've just got your first guitar and you need an amp to go with it, this is, if you learn how to work a Katana, you can work basically any amp out there.
Pretty much.
Because it's sort of boiled down as basic as it is. But then you'll see people on, like professional musicians on stage with katanas.
Absolutely.
Doogie in the shop with his doom metal band is a known katana user as well.
I was shocked at the sounds he gets out of that thing.
I know,
honestly, man.
It just shows you the versatility of it. If you just need to play, if you're playing in a blues band, if you're playing in a doom metal band, if you're playing in your bedroom, if you're playing in a stadium, it doesn't matter. Like, the katana is as versatile. It just is whatever you need it to be.
Yeah.
And that's just the katana archetype. That's just the katana ethos cross generations. With the Gen 3, we've taken it, we've kept that at the heart of it, but just tried to improve what was already there and just give people a few more options, for a few more sound sculpting options on top of that as well, to just make it even more versatile and even more powerful.
Absolutely. And I mean, now that we've covered what's familiar, which I think in a kind of nutshell, everything is familiar about it. If you're pretty adverse or pretty confident with the Mark II, or even if you've still got a Mark I katana, you're going to get on totally fine with this. But I think we should talk about what's new on this now, because that's where all the exciting parts happen.
Yes. So I guess the first thing, the big talking point, is the new amp type that we're going to, that you heard at the beginning through Keiran there, which is the new pushed amp type.
Expanded from 5 sounds now to 6. And I guess with a variation, that's double as well, isn't
12,
it?
yeah, exactly.
It's
so
12 sounds in the one amp via each one there.
Aye, so 12 amps in one.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
But I think before we even kind of describe some of the push stuff, let's just kind of hear it in action, I think, again, because there's a few key points that I want to kind of reference back to after just a little bit of play here. But this is just a little bit of delay, a little bit of reverb on this. The EQ is pretty flat across the board as well. There's not kind of a lot going on, but there's quite a few things going on with this channel that I was particularly impressed with. So through just a kind of single coil sound on the Ibanez here. So what the push channel is giving to me, certainly, and Michael will describe obviously what the intention of it was, but I think anybody who's played a tube amp before, now that's always the argument on the internet, isn't it? It's the tube versus non-tube, and we're not here to settle that debate today in any way, and certainly I don't want to give my full opinion of it as well, in case I get doxxed and I get cancelled on the internet for whatever my opinion of which is the right one. But I think people have always been striving for that like tube quality, and what that to me is certainly is it's dynamic control. It's a sound that is quite unique to those sort of amps, because with the whole thing with people I guess say about a tube amp is that when you crank it up, you're pushing a lot of air, but there's a certain feel about it. There's it's as much kind of whatever fancy words you want to put towards it, I guess, in any sort of description. But
the word I always use is just responsiveness. That's
nailed it.
That's kind of what I always think of with it, as in a tube amp will always, every tiny little nuance to your playing, how much gain is put into the amp from either the amp preamp or even the guitar volume control as well, it affects how it sounds. So that's why you'll see people use controlling the tone of their tube amp by controlling the volume of their guitar.
Absolutely.
Which typically you wouldn't normally be able to do that on a solid state amp. All that would really do is just turn the volume down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or even other types of effects, like if you're scooping the mids and playing your Pantera riffs or your Melodeath riffs.
And don't worry, we will do that later.
Yes, that's why I'm here. But for really expressive playing, that's always what it kind of epitomized to me, and that is the intention. Maybe not the intention, but it is the to me, it's the quality of that pushed amp type.
Yeah.
How Keiran plays it, how much gain is put into it, the amp will respond and in the way that you would expect a tube amp to.
Absolutely. And then I think actually touching on the gain, like you were saying there as well, I'm going to roll the gain down, and if you wouldn't mind, see while I'm playing, Michael, if you could raise the gain kind of all the way just as I'm playing, and we'll hear just the quite vast range in it. Because I think the positioning of this in terms of between the clean and the crunch channel, I think kind of gives it away exactly what's kind of going on with it, you know, in full.
Yeah.
So let's start on kind of gain really, really low down on that, and just if you can raise the gain as I'm playing as well. So there's a certain thing that happens when you get up to the higher gain of that it's quite funny, because we were talking about it just before we played as well, is I think certainly now, see for anybody who maybe, I mean, both me and you are 90s kids, we grew up, you know, with the first sort of iteration of your modular amps and digital and kind of, you know, all the solid state stuff coming in, where you had several different sounds, but it was all very much clean, crunch, distortion.
Aye.
There wasn't that sort of blurring of the lines between like, oh, well, I could get, you know, a crunch if I kind of dial in just, you know, the right amount of gain and the right amount of pressure and stuff like that to your notes. And again, really, really important to say how much the volume can control, or your guitar can affect that channel there.
Yeah.
But whereas anybody who has played a tube amp and loves tube amps know that that's kind of where a lot of the magic comes from, is that like, oh, well, I'm in the danger zone right now.
Yeah, like you're pushing a tube amp to the point where it breaks up.
Yes.
You're not applying an overdrive or a distortion.
Yep.
It's like that is what you're doing. And see where on the panel that pushed amp is positioned, it kind of gives it away. It's between the clean and the crunch channels, and it's kind of there for a reason, because that's where it sort of makes the most logical sense in terms of how much the quality of the sound and the gain of the sounds. That's pretty much where it is to me. It's between clean and crunch in terms of sort of overall gain and the quality of the distortion that you can get. But more than that, it is just, if you want the responsiveness of the tube amp from your solid state, that is where you want to go from it.
And I think actually before we just move on as well here, now the Ibanez is a nice Swiss Army knife, Swiss Army Katana, I guess we can call it. Or that would be the actual amp itself. But anyway, moving over to something like the Les Paul here, which I've got set up in drop D. We'll stick back here.
Now we're talking.
Now we're cooking. But if I crank this up a little bit, this is it was really funny because Aaron in the room, I think actually we're all kind of fans. I quite like that, like, you know, push tube sound myself, but I think because of all the kind of backgrounds we all come from, we like those very specific sort of tones for a purpose, whereas like that kind of like pushed sort of overdrivey crackle at the top sort of, I mean, you kind of have been just, oh, is there something wrong with it? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like,
because I'm basically monitoring the audio and I keep thinking that there's something wrong with it. Like, just because I've been using like, I don't know, like a quad cortex for so long that it's just...
But this is probably the same conversation that happened between like AC/DC and their sound engineer when you walk into the live room and then turn up the Marshall double stack on the clean channel so much that it produces that now iconic distortion sounds.
and let's hear it with an And actually, let's try out the variation after as well, just to show you the
Yeah.
two sounds. But I'll crank this up and let's hear it with the Les Paul in a kind of more sort of rocky sort of atmosphere. Let that sustain go all day as well, which, you know, that's quite a, I don't want to say old school sort of, you know, sort of tone, but it is, you know, AC/DC was a really apt sort of like comparison for that, because all those Marshalls that they were pushing, they were all 100 watts, 50 watts, whatever, just pushing as hard as they can. And that's, to me anyway, that's the sort of sound that you're getting from it, is just, it's a valve amp just working overtime, man.
Yeah, but the thing I love about that sound though is that at the beginning, with a certain setting, you were playing what I would call a very modern style of your drop two voicings, your Instagram guitar, your Instagram guitarist type riffs on the same amp that if you switched your guitar and switched the gain settings, you could play your AC/DC riffs quite faithfully. But then if you put it through the same amp, put it through a Les Paul and drop D, suddenly you're in like 90s alt rock territory.
Yeah, man.
Like that was just pure Pearl Jam to me, like when you were playing there, or like Soundgarden type stuff.
It's Pearl Jam and Soundgarden sharp though, as I just tuned this guitar, so please don't cook me in the comments for that too much.
But it just shows you like that they kind of transcend genres, which is the point here. So you're not buying into, oh, that is my metal sound, that is my grunge sound, that is my rock sound or my modern sounds. And that's what I like about the Katana, is that unlike maybe pedal presets, for example, you're not like, Metal Mania, I guess that is my metal sound. You're thinking about it more like, right, I've got an amp, how should I set my amp up to get those sounds?
Absolutely. And let's just very quickly as well, just on the same settings, if you wouldn't mind just as I'm playing, just to hit that variation button if you could.
Go for it.
That's really quite dramatic.
Yeah, it's quite, it's a lot darker.
Yeah.
But
we're obviously using like a mahogany guitar with humbuckers and stuff like that as well. But I think we heard it on obviously the single coil sound coming from the Ibanez as well, how versatile that channel is.
Yes.
And even if like, I mean, not to spend too much time on it, but I do feel this is probably one of the, you know, the kind of flagship sort of things about this amp is this new channel. And I mean, for me, I think I'd be using it as my clean channel mostly, just because it's like, just gives you that control a little bit more. And even like, I mean, we noticed it, and we'll talk about it a little bit later as well, but the clean has now, like the one before it, the clean channel, if you did want that little extra hair on it, you know, raising the gain, it just gave it more, like it's got so much headroom in that clean channel that you weren't able to get that kind of
break up.
Yeah, right at the top there. Yeah. So I think it's an amazing addition to this amp, and certainly, as you said, if you're kind of that new wave of sort of compressed Instagram sort of guitar tone, if you really like that, to then mix it, you know, with some of the effects and stuff like that, or if you just want something that, you know, just sort of is a bit more angry, then, you know,
a bit hairy.
Crank the gain up, and then, you know, throw a couple of humbuckers in that, and then we're absolutely, you know, totally sorted.
Yeah.
But let's stick with what's new.
Yes.
Obviously, and let's keep this going, because I think we could talk about that push channel all day if we wanted to, but...
Yes, there is more to dig into here, but that's, I think the point to make is, like, yes, it's a new channel, but it's quite an important new channel, is the way to understand it. But aside from that, yes, the other feature that we have is the onboard contour button, which is here in our equalizer channel. So the contour button is a new feature that sort of adjusts the response of the cabinet post 3-band EQ. It's quite a difficult thing to kind of put into words, but
I think let's hear it in action.
That's
first,
the best way to do it,
and
yeah.
then we'll get into it because let's work with our ears first.
it's quite noticeable. So I think that is where to start. With.
Certainly us, yeah.
So yes, we shall. Well, we'll just use the onboard controls for now. So ready.
So definitely, it's not the most obvious, I would say, on the cleaner channels.
Yeah,
which it is a great tool, obviously, for there to be used. But certainly, when we were having a little play before we put the cameras on today, it's most notable on some of the distortion channels.
Aye, absolutely.
So let's do that right now.
Go for it.
Let's go for the highest gain on this guy, which is the brown channel. Obviously, famously, kind of your Eddie Van Halen sort of channel, which shredders alike and riffers will be very keen on. And obviously, we're not doing too much with the EQ itself. Maybe I'm going to cut this back just because of this guitar is slightly darker, but not anything too drastic on the EQ control. But again, Michael's just going to cycle through the contour as I'm playing. So
yes,
let's jump in. Very obvious when we're on the distortion channel there, which I think you put it really well, obviously, when we were talking about it there, was just, you can almost treat the contour as like a post EQ. It's almost like if you've got like a graphic EQ or something like that after everything that's, it's just going to shape everything that little bit more from your core sound, which for some people may be useful. So for some other people, you might not need this as much, but
it's the kind of thing, it really depends on the different contour. They're kind of suited to different types of playing.
Yes.
And in any kind of given moment. Some are more suited for like sort of heavy, chuggy chords. Some is a kind of a nice balance between like highs and lows.
Yeah.
Some are more flat, some are more scooped, and some are more... It really depends on, like, are you playing rhythm, are you playing leads, are you playing clean, are you playing overdriven? It's a bit it's just a bit of sort of trial and error.
Yeah.
Or basically, once you've decided your amp, you then go into your equalizer as you normally would, but then go into your contour and just find the right fit for you that will sort of just add that little bit of secret sauce to your amplifier in the first place.
One thing I could see this being really useful for is if anybody's playing a gig with a Katana and you have two different kinds of guitars. Say, for example, you have a Telecaster and then you have a Les Paul.
Yeah.
Without you having it get in and have to really, rebalance all of your settings, you can just hit that and say, the red contour really suits the Les Paul. Whereas, not having anyone may suit your Telecaster the way it's set up. It's kind of just ease of use, I would see it as, just not having to worry about you going, oh no, I'm going to totally lose my telly when I plug it in or anything like that. You hit that and then you're totally sorted for it. And actually, just while we're here as well, seeing as though we're kids of the 90s, as I mentioned.
Let's scoop those mids.
Let's scoop those mids, baby. red one definitely was my favourite. I couldn't hit that pinch harmonic at the end there.
That's so much more sensible than I would have been. I would have like all bass, all treble, no mids.
I know. You know what? I like to say it comes with experience as well, but it's just I don't want to reveal my roots basically that where I didn't know how to dial in an amp.
Yes, exactly. We do now. I promise.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Maybe not when the cameras are rolling, but let's see. Well, if we go back to our pushed channel again, just because that's the kind of the flagship one that we want to focus on.
Yeah.
The last thing that we want to touch on in terms of what's new. Again, thanks for sticking with us through this as well, just because although it's not you wouldn't say that it's a completely revamped of the amp, but definitely the new stuff that has been added is quite, it's vast in what it does for like quite a, just a couple of little bits.
Yeah, because it's not an extra mode. There's so many more. It's so responsive and so dynamic. That's one extra push channel.
Yeah.
It's so many different. Yeah, you really have to like kind of, what does it sound at a low gain? What does it sound at a high gain? What does it sound if I do this? What does it sound like if I do this other setting? So yeah, I think that's why one setting, we're talking about it for a while, but that's why it's not actually one setting.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility in it as well. And again, this flexibility, I guess, being the apt word for this last section as well, which is the cab resonance.
Yes.
Which this is a feature I've seen on a few Boss amps before, but it's really cool to see them putting it in at the sort of, I don't want to say base level Katana, but it's
not the artist level.
Yeah, this is something that's just, it's a lot more accessible to a lot more people that are going to get use of. So again, I'm just going to play a little bit, and Michael's just going to cycle through the modes here, and we'll talk about it just in a little second as well.
Go for it. Quite subtle, but it does make a noticeable difference to the sound that you're getting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's pretty much what we're trying to say. It is, even it's one of those you're going from like clean to your crunch amp types. It just the biggest difference that I would say between the Gen 3 and the Mark II is that the Gen 3 is a much more responsive amplifier. It has your high gain versus like clean, but even within those, they're just all those little sort of intermittent steps that sort of allow you to just get those like tiny little nuances that if you are playing music that needs that sort of nuance, then it's there between the cab resonance, between the contour, between the push channels with like the different gains on the way in and so on. There's just so much more, I guess, while retaining the Boss effects from the Mark II, while retaining the other amp types from the Mark II as well.
Absolutely. The cab resonance stuff, I think, is quite a cool addition as well, because the way that I sort of figured it out, or not figured it out, sorry, the way that I interpreted it, certainly from the help that Michael's given, and certainly all the guys at Boss as well have been absolutely superb in terms of letting us know what's going into this amp. But the way that we got told about it, certainly, and the way that I definitely agree with, is that the vintage, the modern, and the deep settings, you can almost relate them to like cab types almost, whereas like your vintage is going to be something with kind of like lower watt speakers, maybe open back, a bit more sort of airy,
Aye.
or maybe I got that confused on the other side where it's closed back because that's all your old like Marshalls and stuff like that. Whereas like the modern being an open back, you know, something maybe kind of akin to more of a, you know, more of a metally band, but also still kind of more modern tones.
Yeah.
And then the deep's pretty standard as well. I don't think that needs too much explanation. That's just going to give you that rumble in the low end.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that is we're not trying to mimic any one type of amp or any one model of amp. It's just giving you options for, I want an open back cab for my Katana.
Yeah.
You've got that there. I want a closed back for my Katana. You've got that there as well.
Yeah.
So it's very much, if you're in the studio and you've got access to every possible amp and every possible type of amp in the world, that's how you would do it. You would build your rig between the cab, between the head, between everything else. And even though this is one thing, you still have that same sort of workflow. And the good thing about that is that should you find yourself with unlimited money and in a live room with every possible amp in the world, you would know how to approach it to build them up. So together, even though you're learning on a solid state Katana, it's all transferable knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what kind of bridges that gap that a little bit more is like, you know, even tricks that I was told, I think, when the Mark 1 launched, when the Katana first dropped, I remember our good buddy Mark Harley.
Yes.
Shout out Mark. He told me about this trick that was boost the preamp on the volume there, control the master for your actual level, and then of course the power control as well, which is such a really important thing about the Katana, which, you know, we didn't even touch on that in terms of the what's still familiar, but that's that thing, you know, where this is a 100-watt amp, and we're running this at 0.5 right now for the demo, just so that we can really kind of make the preamp work, but not make our ears bleed, you know?
Yes.
That this is going to give you that responsiveness and that sort of like vibe that older tube amps are maybe going to give, but via a solid state format. And actually, what I want to do before we move on, sorry as well, Michael, from the cab resonance stuff, is let's try that just on a bit more of a lead channel. Just I'd be really keen to hear how each section is moving, maybe over something with a bit more kind of low end and chug to it.
Yeah.
So I'll keep it on the lead there and maybe put some of those mids back tastefully as I scooped the hell out of them earlier.
No, I cannot. That deep cab resonance.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's much more obvious when we're on a distortion channel as well. Just, you know, that's quite a key thing, I think, certainly for anybody who's maybe got like a solo sound, is you can like really differentiate that from your rhythm, you know.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And even from like, I can, my leg was sort of leaning against the amp there when I was doing it, and you can actually, I know this doesn't really translate well to video, but I felt the sound, the actual amp change in terms of how it was vibrating against me. So I think that's just what it is. Even though it's a solid state amp, it's absolutely a living, breathing thing, much like a tube amp as well, or what kind of people would typically describe tube amps as. Whether you're playing cleans or no matter how much gain you've got, however little, however high, little controls like that, it's just a living, breathing amp.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it, just in terms of extra little additions of sort of EQ shapes or amp controls and stuff like that. It's not only great for getting the sound in your head out onto the amp, but you know, it kind of teaches you about what these things are going to do to your sound. You know, it's
exactly.
I certainly grew up just going like, okay, bass, middle, treble, there we go. That's that's all you're getting. Whereas like,
Yeah.
cab type, speaker type, EQ sort of curves and all that sort of stuff, they are so important for overall tone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's sort of the multi-effects logic of, before I ever built a pedal board, I had a multi-effects.
Yeah.
And that was how I learned what all those pedals did.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I learned how to put those all together and learned how they worked, then I went and bought a pedal board and started building my pedals.
Absolutely.
So,
Because you already had the knowledge. So
exactly.
You knew what you liked.
But pedals are generally a bit more affordable than amps and also much smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to buy every type of amp under the sun to experiment with and learn how to work, that's going to be very bulky and very expensive.
Fit them in your big mansion.
Exactly. If you can, more power to you. I certainly can. But if you get yourself a Katana, if you know how to do all that stuff, you're going to you can apply the same workflow to it. If you've yet to learn how that stuff works, cab resonance, mic position, all that sort of stuff, power amps, preamp, like all the rest of it, this will allow you to sort of, if you master the Katana, you'll then understand how to do that.
Yeah.
And if you did find yourself underneath all that, not to say that you would even need any of that, because the Katana Gen 3 can do it brilliantly.
He's sounding more and more like a sword saint every day as well by giving it when you master the Katana.
I know.
But
too much anime and too much boss.
Let's before we move on to just a little section here, man, I just want to, this is more so just for anyone who maybe isn't super familiar with all the channels here. So if I can get you, I'm going to play just a little bit on each channel. You can just kind of flick us through, just see what everything's got to offer. Feel free to do whatever you want with the EQ and whatnot, and I'll react to you, my friend.
You're gonna regret saying that.
I know. We'll start with the acoustic channel, which here it's not particularly a piezo-inspired sort of acoustic thing. This is more just like a flat response, sort of like, if you want to play any of your jazz, you can do a bit on this. Or if you actually have an acoustic, the Katana sounds amazing with that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lead variation.
It's so good.
Shout out to the HM2 users.
Yeah, man, absolutely. The Katana's so easy to kind of get your head around that, like, anybody who isn't super familiar with all the channels, it just, see, as you increase your selection on the amps there, basically the heavier you're getting, the more distortion you've got at your disposal. And I think even like, I don't want to assume this for any guitarist, but I know when I started learning guitar and learning about amps and all that sort of stuff, I knew what clean was, I knew what crunch was, I knew what distortion was, because
Yes.
that's how you start describing those tones. The fact that they're all obviously called that, the only confusing one I would say is the pushed one, which I feel we've covered,
Hopefully.
quite well.
Yes.
But with the brown option there as well for the amp type, again, we touched on that Eddie Van Halen sort of sound, which it's meant to be that kind of modded high gain sort of sound.
Yeah.
That could either be your solo or it could be your your rhythm tone. Sorry, if you are playing kind of a bit more metally kind of coded things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, that is just like the quintessential high gain lead sound.
Yeah.
Like, which is as much to do with Eddie Van Halen as it is to do with the Katana.
Yeah, oh yeah,
I would
absolutely.
say, but yeah, I feel like the Katana Gen 3 absolutely nails that brown sound.
Yeah,
and it's
totally.
like it's so iconic for a reason.
Now with and I'm just going to turn that just back down,
Get
so
the
we're
bees
not
away.
we're not being attacked by bees. But all the new features, it's important to say that they are shared across the other Gen 3 model, which is the 50 watt, which is just behind us there. If you can't see, it's the much it's not even much smaller, to be fair. It's a smaller form factor in a sense, and it's obviously not pushing as much air. Now, the 50 watt doesn't have it does have the push channel. That's on the panel there.
Mm-hmm.
But what it is lacking within it is the cab resonance and the contour switch, which, just to confirm, it is, yes.
I wanted to make sure.
I didn't want to be giving you false information there, but that's all available via the app, isn't
Yes,
it? Yeah.
correct. Which is the new and improved app
yes.
as well. It's a little bit more streamlined, a little nicer UI. Yeah.
If anybody saw the Katana Go video that me and Michael did,
Aye.
that was a really, really heavy focus on the Katana Go because it was a much smaller unit.
Yes.
It didn't have as much, obviously, buttons on it. It didn't have much control on it.
Mm-hmm.
You were doing a lot of your editing via the app if you wanted to edit, because, I mean, all those preset sounds, I think, were absolutely superb on that little unit.
Yes.
But what a lot of people, I think, because one of the cool things about the Katana that I would always say to people is that, well, it's got all of Boss's effects in it,
Aye.
And there's a few controls that you can do with it and really get into the weeds with it if you want to. But what that required was you hooking up to your computer,
Aye.
editing it via that. By no means a hard process, like actually a really easy process, but sometimes you just want to plug and play.
Yes.
You just want to have everything at your disposal there. So I'll let you obviously describe some of the features that you're getting within the app here as well, but the fact that now with the Gen 3 you have control over all that via the app on your phone, it just makes things a lot easier and a lot more streamlined.
Yeah, that's a big one. The computer app was great, but maybe you can't take your desktop computer to your amp rehearsal space or whatever. So via the BT Link adapter, you're able to connect your phone to the amp via Bluetooth, and then use the app to edit your amp settings, edit your effects chains, and so on. And the new addition is you're also able to edit things like your mic position and your mic type and your mic distance from the cab for the line out as well. So if you are taking a direct signal from your amp into a desk or your audio interface or whatever, via the line out or via the USB, you are actually able to have your mic'd up sounds from there, all controllable via the app, which is really cool, really nice, really simple, really responsive.
It's really easy. It's obviously like just get in and see your entire chain here as well, which...
Yeah, exactly. So right now, they're all fairly self-explanatory. You get your guitar in...
Maybe it so you can see it on the camera.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. That'll be upside down.
Oh no. So there we go.
So challenge for you.
Yes. Sorry, I'm playing like 5D chess here, trying to
totally.
get the right orientation. So yeah, it's all fairly self-explanatory. So from here, we're able to... So we've got a few different presets that, let's say if I go into Spongy Crunch.
Spongy Crunch!
That crunch sure is spongy.
Sure is spongy.
But the good thing about this is that, again, learning about this stuff on the katana, if you hear a sound that you like, you can understand, you can look at the app and then understand what goes into it. Not only what the amp settings are in terms of the gain and EQ and stuff like that, but oh, that has a booster on it. You can touch it to turn it off, you can touch it to turn it back on.
Off there as well again.
So look at that. Without a multi-effects, without an effects board, you now know what a booster does, typically. Which is great. And now let's say, oh, I'm mostly happy with that sound, but for my solo, I want a little bit of modulation. So you're able to turn on the modulation block. If you press and hold, you can now go in. So it's set to a chorus typically. And with a few clicks, you've just added an echo to your chain. If you want to turn it off, then you can. Then so I think there's another delay here.
So we had two delays running on that.
Yes, we did.
Which was really cool. You know, it's super flexible, even with like, because you might look at this and see like, oh, the modulation block's only going to be, you know, chorus and phaser and flanger and again any of your favorite boss pedals that you would want to.
Exactly.
But the ability to be able to have your modulation, you know, option here is when you switch that channel on. When you switch your spongy crunch on, you can have a modulation and an echo on the one modulation, obviously, tab there.
Exactly.
Which it gives you more options to, you know, experiment and try some new stuff and, you know, have just basically your perfect sound at your disposal.
Yeah, and it's your perfect sound using, this would all be outboards. This has nothing to do with amps. This is all outboard gear.
Yeah.
But it's actually built into the amp itself. So you're getting a fully processed, like, amps are an important part of the process, but in terms of the final sound that you hear, there's so much more that goes into it through outboard gear, through pedals, and so on. The Katana Gen 3 has all that built into it, but via the app, it's easier than ever to start experimenting with it. So the last thing to really touch upon, which I kind of mentioned earlier, is this line out setting, which now has Boss's airfield technology in it. So what does that mean? Well, let's find out. So we're just going into system, we're going to line out settings. And now what this is, you can see here, if you were to take a line out from the amp the same way you would a pedal with that capability or just any direct line, not only are you getting your distortions and your modulations and your amps and stuff like that, but it will actually sound like a mic'd up amp. And not only with that, you can then change the mic type. So you got dynamic mics, you got condenser mics, excuse me, and ribbon mics as well. And again, if you want to learn about what did different mics sound like what do amps sound like when they're mic'd up by different mics, that's a lot of mics to buy to experiment with it. But now with this drop down menu, you can audition them quite easily. You can adjust the mic distance, you can adjust the mic position, which is how offset it is from the center of the cone.
Yep.
And also ambience level as the room sounds that your mic is typically picking up as well. So that's the thing. And again, beginners can learn about this stuff and then take that knowledge with them. And people who are already sort of fluent in this lingo and know how to do that can go in and say, if you were recording your tube amp and you're like, I want to change where the mics are, you would go up and change the mics. Whereas you can still do that with this. You don't have to think about it any differently.
Yeah.
You can just treat the amp like an amp.
Yeah, it's such a cool little just, because that's where I think, you know, the sort of shift to digital amp technology, shall we call it, and that I'm encompassing, you know, modelers in there, I'm encompassing plugins in there, a lot of kind of these things that guitarists can get their hands on now, which is giving them kind of like the ability to test out what mic placement does for your sound, what the ambience in the room can do for your sound, what even a different kind of microphone can do for that. And I again, kind of pulling back to what I kind of cut my teeth on, and I imagine you were the same as well. That was just like, you got your 3-band EQ, there you go.
Yes.
That's you, and that's a very, very, very important part of a lot of amplifiers, and whether it be, you know, however many bands of EQ you have to control. But if you think about it, every single guitar tone, or our favorite guitar tones, whatever that is, probably about 99% of those are recorded onto, you know, a record, whether it be live, whether it be in the studio. What is that going from? That's a guitar into some pedals, into an amplifier, but it's all being captured with a microphone.
Exactly.
You're not hearing that guitar in the room sound, you know, it's being captured with very meticulously placed and selected microphones.
Exactly, yeah.
But that's almost like, well, there's your final piece of the puzzle there, you know.
Exactly. And yeah, that's exactly it. So not only does it affect how the amp sounds in the room, but it just makes it a great recording tool as well.
Yeah.
So much more accessible. If you want to record your amped guitar sounds, the Katana can do it. The app makes it even easier.
Yeah.
You don't need to be buying an acoustically treated room, every microphone under the sun.
No.
Like, you know, all this kind of stuff. You're able to do that all through the new and improved amp as well. Which, again, just like the sounds are cross-compatible between the Katana products, the apps are also very similar architecture. So if you can work one maybe previous iteration of any kind of Boss editor, it's all the same, very similar kind of workflow.
Yeah.
It's all very simple. If you can work one, you can work this one, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's a really cool kind of cross-platform thing that just allows people to just feel pretty confident, especially like if you do plan on making the jump from the Mark II to maybe the Gen 3 here, just know that all the things that you love about the amp that you're currently playing are here, and all the new additions are just going to give you that much more, obviously, flexibility, and to really start kind of shaping stuff for yourself, which is, I think, just really cool about that. You know, it's not just okay, here's like a couple of new features that will drastically kind of change sounds, but it's giving you these things to like just really kind of sharpen like your sounds, you know.
Yeah.
Like, if you do want to just treat this as your practice amp that you just plug into and go, you don't even need the app, you know. That's everything on it is still so flexible within itself. But then if you do want to take it to that next stage, then, you know, the kind of, it's all at your fingertips if you need it, you know. And with obviously the inclusion of this now being Bluetooth compatible, kind of one of the things was just, you know, like, Boss want to make this a quite an accessible and quite an affordable amplifier.
Exactly.
You know, that's one of those things where they maybe didn't have the Bluetooth technology on it as well, just because they wanted it to be so much more accessible to a lot more people.
Yeah, because not everyone's going to want it or need it,
No.
so that's why it's optional. But if this will make your life, because we don't want to get people to pay for features that aren't going to benefit them.
No.
So it's the
definitely not.
option that if this sort of thing seems valuable to you, if you would benefit from it, then you can. Then you're able to sort of access those features.
Yeah, absolutely.
With these optional accessories, be it the Bluetooth adapter and also the effects switcher as well.
Yeah, man, that's the coolest thing. And actually, just on the top of switchers as well, the Boss GAFC foot switch as well. We've got that plugged in today, which has got a couple of cool features. Whether that be you changing between with a 100-watt anyway version, you've got 4 channels that you can program in. You know, clean, a pushed, a crunch, and then a lead or whatever you want to, or it can actually just be your stomp box control. So
yeah,
I'm going to switch that on, and we'll even just see that in action just very, very quickly here as well. Which, let me just turn everything off. So
that is just your amp. And shout out Spongy Crunch. That sounded
Oh
gorgeous.
man, that's a super cool channel.
So hopefully you'll see from as Keiran was turning his stomp boxes off and on, you would see it reflected in not only the app screen but also the effects panel as well. Which, again, if maybe the effects panel and the lights on the Switch themselves might be enough, but if you do want a bit more information, you don't need to break out your multi effects just to have a screen to work with. You've just got your free app that you can go in, and once your booster's on, I want to tweak that a little bit. Press and hold, and now you're into your booster settings, and now it's instantly responsive.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's not been obviously made apparent, it's all in real time. It acts really, really well.
Yeah. I was really surprised by how responsive it was.
Oh,
Actually,
it's immediate, man. Yeah, it's really cool, and it allows you to do it on the fly whenever you need to. You don't need to wait 3 to 5 business days for your setting to be chucked in. The one of the another little addition. This is mostly just with the foot switch here as well. And again, we're talking about stuff that isn't necessarily necessary. Well, that was a hard one to say there. Jeez, but the 100 watt here has got this additional little solo boost, which don't get it confused with your booster setting there. But the way that I'm activating it with the foot switch there is I'm pressing and holding just on one of the. Oh wait, I need to put it on the other one. Sorry. There we go. You see that red light just going on there? It's just that's a straight up volume boost, which if you need to kick it on for a solo, you can. It's nice and easy. I'm just pressing and holding one of the buttons on the foot switch there.
Yeah.
Which, we've kind of, I think we've covered pretty much all the things I wanted to talk about with this today. Like, one of the very important things is that we've said it several times throughout the video is just the things that you loved about the Katana. If you do play one of these, it's all still there.
Exactly. Yeah. For me, I would always break it down for. We're now at the point when we're like, who's this for?
Yes.
And I mean, the easy answer is everyone. But
everybody.
More specifically, it's great for beginners because it is simple. It is as simple as a guitar amp can be, and it gives you a lot of transferable knowledge and a lot of room to experiment that you can then take with you as you develop as a player. It is for existing Katana users because you can take all your Katana sounds from the previous, from the Mark II into the Gen 3 quite easily. And all the features will be there. The workflow is still there. It's not like you have to learn a completely different language to work the Gen 3.
Yep.
If you work the Mark II, you can work the Gen 3 absolutely no problem. And it's good for existing users because even if you're perfectly happy with your Mark II, it just gives you more options. You're not going to know where these additional sounds are going to take you until you have access to them.
Absolutely.
So even if you are perfectly happy with your Mark II, you don't feel like it's lacking anything, just come in and give the Gen 3 a try and you might be surprised. Experiment with it. It's part of the fun of having, any gear, but especially stuff as versatile as the kind of all singing, all dancing boss gear like this as well. And finally, it is also for new Katana users as well. People who have never owned a Katana. If you've felt maybe the Mark II didn't do something that you needed it to do or you wanted it to do, now's a great time to come in and test all these new features out as well. It's just as accessible, but much more versatile. So maybe spending a bit of time with it in the store with myself, maybe it will scratch that itch that the Mark II didn't quite do. Whether that's the new amp type, whether that's the new contour settings, whether it's the new cab resonance, whether it's the app. There's plenty new stuff on here. Whatever kind of player you are, come in and give it a try, and you might be surprised.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a better time to check out a Katana if you maybe haven't so far. As Michael said, he's in the Glasgow Guitar store 5 days a week. He's there solidly. Go in and have a little chat with him, but then obviously, I think you'd be quite hard pressed to find somebody that works in one of our stores that doesn't recommend the Katana, at least to any player who goes, I'm looking for an amp that does this, 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 and this. And we go, well, cool, check this out.
Exactly.
It's always a point to, point people in the direction of. But yeah, thanks for coming in today, Michael.
Thank
Really
you for having me,
appreciate it.
Keiran.
Again, it's always fun when you drop by the studio, man. And
Yes.
certainly when there's some cool stuff to talk about, it's also great to get your expertise on it as well. But let us know what you think about the brand new Katana Gen 3 in the comments down below. And if you haven't already, and if you've liked the video, give us a like and a subscribe because it does go a long way to helping the channel. But until next time, I've been Keiran,
My name is Michael.
and we've been checking out the brand new Boss Katana Gen 3. Have a great day.